Sometimes our arguments would heat up at supper. I remember beating my friend one day when he lost an argument and resorted to insults. I was taller than most of the boys my age and more athletic. Dad had come early as soon as he read the news in the evening tabloid. We spent the evening on the TV glued. The news of revenge against Sikhs started to trickle in. Mrs. Gandhi's son, Rajiv Gandhi, was the next Prime Minister of India. A mob of about 20 were outside our courtyard gate all of a sudden, hurling bricks, rocks at our home, chanting slogans like, "Sikhs are traitors, they killed our mother, blood for blood." The one-time dictator of India, who only a few years earlier unilaterally dissolved the government, censored the press, and had given herself complete power. And she had been charged and convicted and imprisoned for this. All of a sudden, she was a martyr of India. The mob quickly dispersed after a few minutes of terrorizing us, and Dad quickly got on the phone to call DSP Batoria, his friend. Finally, the phone rang. I jumped up anticipating Daddy's friend, but it was not him. The voices were unfamiliar, clear and stern. They addressed me by my name. "We are coming to your home soon. We will. You in front of your mother, your father, and your brother. Hundreds of us, before we kill you all." The language they used made the term gang rape sound sophisticated. I couldn't exactly process all the words, but the message managed to terrorize one who was generally referred to as a tomboy and fearless, me. Perhaps it was their calm and authoritative tone of voice conveying that they had business. Who were they? How did they know me? How did it know it was me who answered the phone, not my sister, not my mom? Dad looked at my pale face, my shaking hands, and grabbed the receiver. He heard the last bits and figured out what was going on. He yelled at them. They hung up. The calls didn't stop throughout the day. Each time, they would tear the already scary silence that pervaded our home. We had no choice but to answer the phone. In anticipation, it was the police. In the meanwhile, after trying him for the 100th time, Dad got DSP Batoria on the line. He said, "I'll send you some security." Security never showed up, but the mob did. This time they came with more bricks, as well as torches in their hands. They hurled the bricks first, broke more windows, jumped over the locked gate, and set fire to our car and the scooter. They damaged the electricity panel outside and cut off the supply into our house. And quickly, they disappeared again. They were probably testing if we had any weapons. We didn't, and Dad regretted not having anything to protect his family with. We called the fire department in vain, and as soon as we felt safe, we rushed out of the flames and put them out with a garden hose. None of our neighbors came to help. The streets were quiet and deserted, as if no one suddenly lived there. When the realization occurred that we were on our own, we started cooking up some defense strategies if the mob were to show up again. We knew we wouldn't last long. My sister was only 13, my brother was 11, and Mom was no good to put up a fight. She'd never even raised her hands on us. Running would be an option, but to where and how far? Why weren't the neighbors worried about us? They surely saw the mob the last 2 times. Why hadn't anybody called to see if we were okay? All the while, we were hoping that it was over and the government would act by now. They may be a bit slow, and how could they let an innocent, law-abiding family be treated like this? After all, this was India, the biggest democracy in the world. A country that boasted its secularity and diversity, a country whose freedom Sikhs had laid down their lives for. For centuries, against the Persians, the Turks, the Afghan invaders, little did we know that it was the government who was sponsoring the programs against its own people. The sun was starting to set on the silence, and the silence got darker. Smoke was seen in the distance, and the occasional telephone call chilled our bones. The calm before the storm didn't last long. They were back before, over 100 in numbers this time. Bricks, torches, metal rods, machetes. We were surrounded. The front gate, from the side. Before we knew it, someone had jumped the gate, broken the front door open, and entered the living room. There was another door that separated the living room from the hallway and led to the bedrooms on each side, and the kitchen towards the center of the house. Dad yelled, asking us to jump off the back wall behind kitchen courtyard and to run for our lives, while he rushed to shut the hallway door in order to get some time. The rebellious teenager I refused to leave him. I was his strong warrior, his second line of defense. I joined him and held the door handle from the sideway, trying to shut it. We found the mob already at work on the other side. 3 young men leading the mob got a hold of the door and they started pulling in the other direction, trying to get at us. We knew it was over for us. We only wanted to delay them, so my sister and my brother had a chance. They needed at least one parent. Blood-curdling screams of "kill them, get them," filled the space, along with the glowing light of the torches, flashing iron rods and machetes above all, the deviously criminal shining eyes of the mob. The door went back and forth a few times between us. It was then that one of them who called me on the telephone, I recognized the tone of his voice. The words, even though they were all through the noise, the struggle went on for over a minute. And then suddenly, I came to face with the killers, rapists, and plunderers. The scene comes clearly alive, even 25 years after I write about this dreadful day. And then something happened. Our bodies switched into survival mode, and we applied superhuman force. Dad and I somehow managed to shut the door and latch it closed. Our hands were bruised, but it seemed to have become one with the door handle. And the struggle gave my brother and sister enough time to escape. My weeping and terrified mother, still desperately trying to climb the wall 6 feet high. And she kept falling back over to our side. We picked her up and literally dumped her on the other side, and Dad and I worked in unison, as if we had practiced this drill several times beforehand. The ground was much lower on the other side, and the hut belonging to the neighborhood jamadars, toilet cleaning workers. That's where they lived. I jumped over next and I helped my mom, and I could see the torch-bearing mob slowly trickling into the side street, but at a safe distance. There, Miss Jane flashed out of the hut and grabbed us, shoving us in to the hut. And when I woke, I remember struggling with Miss Jane, trying to grab a knife from the kitchen in the back and to go back for my brother and sister. She somehow prepared for it, and she didn't let me go. Being an educated and cultured lady, she had brought Vikas, who was her son, and he saw my torn, disheveled hair. He apologized, and with a blush of embarrassment, I'm sorry, I skipped a part. As I waited, a prisoner in their kitchen on this fateful day of 1984 for a few hours, I did not have a clue as to what had happened to the rest of my family. I only knew that my mother was safe. Where did they go? Was my dad able to make it? Did the mob get him? Humiliated, hurt, and helpless, I was crying. What if they were wounded and needed help? If someone had killed my family, didn't I have a right to go after them? Miss Jane's family kept me there the whole time. Around midnight, one by one, we were all finally united. 5 of us intact, with just minor injuries. Dad, who didn't have the opportunity to cross the street, was quickly hidden in the Jamadar's hut. He was quickly hidden in the Jamadar's hut after they found him. And my mother had been outside, calmly consoling a crying baby in her arms. The kids were helped by a Christian school teacher in the apartment complex right outside our house. By the kids, she means her brother and sister. They had jumped a wall to get there and spent the night at Suppan, my Hindu friend's home. Apparently, since several of our neighbors ultimately realized their homes were threatened by the spreading of the fire, they finally called the fire department, who put out the flames. It'd taken us 5 years to build that dream house. Dad was busy running his small transport business, often out of town. So when we moved to this place, this 300 square foot space, it felt like a mansion. We, the kids, had our own bedroom and a spacious bathroom and a king-size bed for the three of us. There had been a small garden in the front courtyard, a rooftop, the shade of a giant tree under which my desk stood, my haven. That's all I wanted, a quiet spot to read. Now, in newfound camaraderie, we could see the haven smoldering, smoke merging with other smoke clouds emanating from Sikh homes and businesses across the city of Indore. The city had a sizable Sikh population, as Guru Nanak had visited there himself, but now all those places were being attacked by locals who were antagonizing the souls of the ancestors who had played host to the great Guru. A total of 26 Sikhs were officially reported to be killed by the mob in Indore and surrounding areas. The real figures in India are invariably much higher than the actual counts. Thousands of businesses and homes and automobiles were destroyed. No respectable family ever reports a rape in India. Hence, none were ever talked about. Although there were plenty of rumors about rape suicides. The second day, as news of the curfew order was broadcast, we went back and took a look at our house, what was left of it at least. The mob had taken everything, destroyed the rest. Photograph, sports trophies, things that mattered to me the most. Burnt, charred. My handcrafted doll I had made for a craft project was lying there half burnt, one-eyed, accusing me of desertion. It was my dad's first home that he owned in the country as a refugee. He had fled there in 1947 from a tragedy of mayhem, of partition. It was my last. Refugees and renters, that's what we felt we were in India.